I'm pretty sure that every single player on World of Tanks has stumbled into an autoloader that is YOLO'd in both on either the enemy team or your team to do one clip of damage and gets taken out instantly. So today we're going to be teaching those donkeys not to be doing that and how to actually play autoloaders to be able to have insane results like these. So stay tuned because these games are absolutely crazy, and just watch how this T57 Heavy catches the enemy autoloader out of the beginning of the game and pumps him for 1600. Now this game, and of course autoloaders in general, are always very difficult to get to work in the beginning of the game because a lot of people just end up losing all of their hit points, making the autoloader meta that happens at the end of the game almost impossible because you don't have your hit points to trade, which is where this 57 Heavy has done a really good job being able to clip out a couple of boys on the enemy team and be able to pick up nearly 3,300 damage within the first few moments of the game starting. And he finds himself up against the CC here, going for the lower plate and of course the side of the turret with these super amazing heat rounds that the 57 Heavy gets. Now obviously when you're playing in an autoloader, sometimes you do want to take AP rounds because you can end up just tracking opponents, and it can be a bit of a painful experience when you knew that you didn't need to fire the premium, and they are expensive of course, and you know, it's just not necessary all of the time. But I see why some players decide to run full premium. It's because they think it's going to be better. But in this game, it doesn't matter, and it works out all right in the end. And you can see here, using the hit points that he does have available, he goes in and finds out the Ho-Ri really badly. And the Ho-Ri ends up back in the garage where he belongs, under the wrath of the autoloading T57 Heavy, and quite easily picked up 6,000 damage, or what seems to be easily within this game. Now obviously there is a type 5 Heavy that is pushing up, but because of these heat rounds, the type 5 Heavy is going to find himself not looking all too good. A really kind of painful shot there, maybe a bit of a misplay to not aim 100% into the type 5, and gets a little bit lucky to pen that last one as well, but picking up just another casual 1,200 damage. And this is why autoloaders are amazing, and if you can just pull back around a building and use cover as you're basically to avoid being hit, you can really trade to the best of your ability. I mean, trading is what autoloaders were made for. Pulling around a corner, dumping out your clip, and taking maybe one or maybe even two shells of damage and still coming away with usually double the damage that you would have received. It's just that kind of case in where maybe you overcommit with an autoloader and don't have the team support, get YOLO'd by an opponent, and that's what's going to leave you high and dry and taken out of the game real quickly. But 57 Heavy playing quite passively here at this point in the game, made the aggressive play to begin with, but into a relatively decent spot to not really get pushed by a whole lot. And considering that the T57 Heavy gets a decent entry clip kind of reload, and because it also gets a decent reload, it's able to output damage fairly consistently, that even if you do get YOLO'd by someone, usually, unless it's a waffly 100, but we'll get onto that later, you can deal with them and you can take those hits even then to fully reload. So what happens next in this game, considering that it's still fairly tight and there is a possibility of losing? So with 8,000 damage on the clock, he manages to snap a shot into the CC, getting a little bit lucky. I guess maybe it's that CC RNG. Yeah, apologies. Apologies. But either way, what he moves on now is finding this E100, the ultimate tank that you want to be able to deal with. And what you notice there is instantly after he took out the CC, knowing that the enemy team aren't really nearby, he can take a full reload. And a lot of the times people will hold on to maybe 1 or 2 or 3 shells, even though they could have fully reloaded before they next engage with an opponent. And this is the perfect scenario. This is what you want when you're playing in your autoloader. Now he makes a little bit of a misplay bouncing off of the E100 here, but his teammate helps him out to be able to get another shell into this guy, and he deals 9,900 damage so far, and the game is still fresh. There's still a little bit of hit points, and when you have an autoloader, of course, when there's health at the end of the game, you can steal it all and you can munch it all up, provided you move fast enough to get to the opponents before they get YOLO'd by your team. And that's exactly what he's done here. Made a beeline for the Object 140, so when he's reloaded, it's easy pickings, and can he manage to get another shot of damage? Can he maybe even pick off 2? And of course, with the intricate reload being superb, he does manage to pick off 2, decides maybe to go for a bit of damage, and then ends up finishing off the 140 either way, picking up another 1,000 and a bit damage within a couple of shells, and with 11,199 damage overall, this game was absolutely insane, and hopefully a good indication as to the up top level that you can have with these autoloaders. And what's even better is he finishes off the artillery at the end of the game as well. So hopefully this has been an interesting start to this video, but stay tuned because this is going to be another gameplay that completely blows your head, much like the enemy team are going to get blown. And so what better way to start off this replay than the middle push on, of course, one of the more interesting maps, Pearl River, for an autoloader, because there's a lot of positions where you can get caught out and subjected to just an annihilation of enemy tanks. And you can see here the M103 on the enemy team exposing part of his turret, which we all know what the M103 is like, just an absolute disgusting crap box of a turret that can be penned by most things, and when you're firing premium ammunition like you're seeing here, it is just paper. So the heavy tank taking 4 hits in that to only deal just 1, and so a really good trade at the beginning of the game in the Foch B with a tier 10 French tank destroyer that is very powerful with its 6-shot autoloader with 400 damage per shell, capable of being able to deal 2,400 damage in 1 clip. So this, I guess, is one of the most outrageous clippable tanks that you can essentially just power on through and really ruin someone's day. Now, with there being very little resistance in the middle, probably because they don't want to get clipped out by a Foch B, he decides to actually make his way to try and find out where the Progetto 46, the tier 8 Italian auto-reloading tank that isn't quite an autoloader, and see if he can manage to send him back to the garage as he's attempted to do with the M103. And he does manage to find the Progetto, who's about to find himself in a very sticky situation, having to YOLO off a cliff. And yeah, a considerably good player in the Progetto as well, managing to get 3 marks, and he's just lost another 1,200 hit points. This is why autoloaders, I feel like in World of Tanks, are some of the strongest vehicles, and why I wanted to showcase them today, because there's so many different tanks and variety of tanks that you can play that are super good, but I feel like these tanks are just one of the best when you can get them working properly, and they are so much fun when you find tanks and you can clip out, you know, 2, 3, 4 tanks within 1 clip and come away with a result that you'd be very proud of. Now, this game has gone okay. 3,100 damage for about 800 received in this game. Not a bad trade. Now, the Foch maybe unluckily decides not to reload here, and the YOLOing Progetto, who's obviously triggered that he got pumped earlier, decides to take a push. So a decent play by the Foch B, and that's where you really have to think about what's going to happen in the next few games, or at least the next few moments of the game, when you are playing in these autoloaders, because you have to really think ahead, which is why, you know, YOLOing at the beginning of the game is, yeah, not very good. You might be able to do 1,000 damage, but you're a done deal after that. So Foch B knows exactly that the Progetto is going to be trying to make his way into the middle again, probably thinking that he's going to be on this long reload, and unfortunately for him, he's not, and he finishes him off. So, what next? Well, the next bit is finding himself up against the enemy tier 10 autoloader, who was, yeah, goodbye Waffle. Very nice. Finishes off another tank. Can he get another tank in this game? Finds himself an Iron Arnie. Removes the majority of his hit points. Obviously going for damage in this game. But with the E5 pushing from behind and being in a non-turreted tank, he decides to make the play coming down the hill and trying to avoid that E5 hit, making sure to get himself behind the rock over here such that the M103 and the KV4 can't hit him, and also avoiding being able to be YOLO'd by the E5 unless he of course follows him down the cliff. So that allows him a little bit of extra time to be able to reload, and now that he's fully reloaded and with enough hit points to take one hit, he's going to be able to hopefully deal with this Jagdtiger prototype. The Jagdtiger prototype does manage to hit him, actually ends up low rolling, leaving him alive, and yeah, the Jagdtiger prototype's back in the garage pretty quick. But the KV4 wastes no time to try and make his move, and he goes for the damage here. Not the best aim shot, probably under the pressure at this point in the game, and uh-oh, this is really bad. There are multiple tanks pushing whilst he's on his reload. There's an M103 that could get a hit. There's a KV4, he's about to just come round, but in true autoloader fashion finds himself the one spot in the game from the dead wreck of the enemy tank in the Jagdtiger. This avoids being hit from the guys in front, and really the only threat is if this E5 decides to YOLO on down, but because his teammates are all sat ready to farm, this E5 can't really make that push without taking multiple hits, and it's not going to be worth it. And this is where making sure that you know what you're doing in an autoloader is so good. Now, he's obviously wanting this KV4 to be gone because he can't really poke very easily. When you're in a non-turreted tank, you have to expose a lot of the vehicle to be able to actually get any shots in. And what he's doing here is thinking about maybe he can destroy this building, but of course that depends on whether the building's destructible. You can't really see it's behind a bush. You'd have to actually come out of the sniper mode, zoom all the way out to see what sort of building it is, and it does look like it could potentially be a destructible building, but he doesn't know that, and he doesn't want to waste a shot in case the E5 does make that push. Now, waiting very patiently, the E5 does come around the corner. He puts one into him, manages to try and go for the tracks, and he has to push this E5 because it's going to give him another opportunity to reload potentially. Can he get one in there? Ends up bouncing the E5 as he only exposed the lower plate as he came around, and the E5 tried to snap it, didn't manage to go in that lower plate and ended up on the upper plate angled, so it actually bounced. And now he's in a really nice spot. He removed the M103 earlier, but it was just a case of waiting for the M103 to make a misplay, and now it's really down to the Foch to try and carry this game with a 3 versus 2 actual tanks and an artillery on the enemy team. So with the last known position of the T-28 actually being over on this flank, he decides to try and make a bit of a weird play and surprise this T-28 by coming in a direction that he's probably not going to be thinking of, as well as allow himself the opportunity to maybe spot the artillery who could be camping still in the base next to the cap circle. Now, is it going to guarantee that he's going to spot him? No, he's not really going for him, but you never know, you may spot him coming around this side as well as coming up from behind at this T-28. And because the T-28 is of course not a turreted tank destroyer, he's going to be able to lock him down, hopefully, fingers crossed, to be able to get all of the rest of the hit points. And as he comes around this corner, oh look, there's the T-28, puts one into the tracks, attempts to, puts another one into the tracks, one into the cupola, one into the cupola. Is he going to be able to bounce it? Yes, he does. And oh, a little bit of a clenchy bombhole moment there, but he still manages to take out the T-28. Getting a little bit lucky in this game, guaranteed that some of these people actually bounced, but either way, a really good round of World of Tanks, picking up 10,400 damage so far, and let's see if he can deal any more shots. Now, having searched around for the Tiljager, he manages to find the M5053, puts one into him with a little snapshot. The Tiljager is also in the cap circle, which means he's going to be looking at him. So can he finish him off to secure the game whilst being on only 19 hit points, which means the Tiljager could probably fire HE and take him out. And if he gets any length of the side armor of this vehicle, yeah, it is just curtains. And so what he does here is he turns to make the Tiljager, if the Tiljager's doing this, to think that he's going to be coming around the other side rather than the way he's facing. But unfortunately, the Tiljager's just sat there pre-aiming, as you'd expect when you're playing in this sort of clutch scenario, but still manages to pick up 10,900 damage with 10 kills, taking out 2/3 of the entire game, getting a Pools medal. yeah, really amazing result, and hopefully was an enjoyable one for you. So if you enjoyed watching it, so many shots hit the opponents in this game, then why don't you hit the like button. Now then, if you thought watching the Foch was bad enough, being able to clip out some of the tanks in the game, yeah, let's see what the Waffenträger E100 can do on a map like Stajanki. And why bother even showcasing the Waffle E100? Well, this is one of the most overpowered tanks that Wargaming ever released into the game, being able to clip out nearly every single tank in the game, including the Maus when it was first introduced. And that made it one of the most outrageous vehicles. And with this 5-shot autoloader capable of dealing the same damage as a Jagdtiger with just one shell, and it has 5 of them, it's able to deal 2,800 damage in a clip, nearly able to full health a Maus if it's not using any of the field modifications, and of course if it isn't using the hardening that you can get. So with this tank being so powerful, with that autoloader that is just basically a snapper, it is able to snap up damage real quick. I apologise, it's an awful pun, but moving on in this game, what do you do when you're playing in a Waffle E100? Well, what you do is you clip other Waffle E100s, and it's a battle of the broken, I guess. And unfortunately for the enemy Waffle, yeah, he wasn't quite broken enough in this game. And with a ridiculous result like that, picking up 3,500 damage in what seems to be one of the easiest amounts of 3.5k I've ever seen. Yeah, you can see why autoloaders, when played right and not just YOLOing in, are pretty good. And the best bit about the Waffle E100, other than the fact that it can just clip out everything, is the accuracy and also the ability it can do to remove full health tier 10 tanks from the game, like the Rinoceronte trying to make an actual play. And it's basically a big counter to any pushing maneuvers the enemy team can make, which autoloaders can be. They can be a blockade to stop opponents from just making the plays and pressure plays, and you can, when you play them correctly, just block a flank entirely. So yeah, very good. Now with the game not looking all too good at this moment in time, what he does here is actually decides to push into the middle. Now this play is dangerous and it is potentially able to get you taken out, but the best bit about doing this is you can unload all of your shells without the enemy team even reloading once. Yeah, balanced indeed, Wargaming. But the key thing is that sometimes you just have to take a few hits in an autoloader and trade your health, because at the end of the game, if you don't, you're going to get swamped by tons of opponents, and your team is relying upon you to deal that damage consistently, and that is exactly what the Waffle's done here. So what he does now is decide, fighting a Kranvang, a Super Conqueror, and some of the other vehicles that are on this flank is probably not the best idea in a paper tank destroyer that is, yeah, may have a huge amount of alpha, but it can surely take a lot of hits. So what he wants to do is single out opponents and use that 5-shot autoloader to really rip them apart before they even realise, and hopefully before they only fire a single shot. And even if they do fire one shot, you're dealing 2.8k maximum to them as well. So now that he's fully reloaded, he can be aggressive again, and this is the continuous aggression that these autoloaders can provide. So he pushes in quite well, I'd say maybe not preemptively, but he preempts that he needs to move, otherwise he's going to lose this flank, and so he manages to get above the Super Conqueror, because it's a huge tank, to be able to hit the Cupola really easily. But there is a 268 on the enemy team, who's of course making a little bit of a misplay here, but this is not good. A E3 sat behind him, able to get a free shot of damage, and if the E3 had decided to load a HE round there, could have been very bad indeed with the armor that this tank gets. But luckily for him, the E3 doesn't have that sort of brain power, which is what we like to see. Now the enemy tanks do get spotted, and he plops in one round to the vehicle there, the Leopard 1, and manages to now try and get a shot onto this M60 who's out in the bushes. But with very little damage left in this game, he's going to try and pre-aim where the other vehicle, the Gorilla 15, is hopefully going to be. Now the M60 is going to find it difficult to even spot the Waffle, even with the terrible camo that this tank gets. And luckily for him, he manages to land a successful round on the Gorilla, picking up over 10,000 damage and a little bit of assistance on top to bring the grand total to 11,000 damage combined. So a really amazing result in probably the most broken tank tier for tier that was ever released, and luckily we don't have to see all too much of it all the time. After seeing a couple of amazing replays in really good conditions for autoloaders, what about what happens when you don't get the perfect matchup and when you're having to play a fairly lightly armoured heavy slash medium slash autoloading weird vehicle like the AMX-50B and decide to go onto a map that is dominated by traditional heavy tanks and armoured mediums, like for example the 140, and of course heavy tanks like the IS-7, the E-100, and of course when you're having to deal with things like the Cobra it can be a little bit tedious. But with the 50B in this game, he's able to get into a pretty solid position here, getting a little bit lucky that the 140 got removed in this game after a little bit of help from the Concept 5 here. But now he is in the ultimate position for a tank like this, being able to counter any of the heavy tanks that try and make a move. And a Jag Panzer E-100 and going for the tracks. Oh no. The Jaegeru. And this is what autoloaders do so well, being able to double track opponents, lock them in place and really ruin their game. And it is amazing to see with such a tank like the 50B actually working on this map. I very rarely see 50B games working as well as this one did on this game. Now that's maybe down to a little bit of luck, but also a lot of skill when it comes to making the 50B work. Obviously this player's got 2 marks on the 50B, knowing exactly what they need to do usually within games, and you can see here able to pump in a couple of shots against the Maus as he crosses as well, pulling back behind this ridge right here such that opponent tanks just can't get any shots on you. There's no way they can deal with you, and also from the hill area here they also can't get any shots. So perfect placement for the 50B, and essentially it's just down to you pulling out when you need to get a bit of damage. And you can see him just trying to bait opponents, maybe they're pre-aiming him, you never know. And so when he does this little poke, a little jutter forward and a jutter back, he's able to avoid taking any shows of damage, or at least minimize the angle that the opponents may have on him. Now apparently the G-Saw didn't realise that the rest of his team's been pumped when they've gone into that position, and so yeah, he makes the same mistake. Unfortunately isn't able to connect a shell here, but he does put one into the E-100, and with the decent premium round penetration of the 50B, he's able to go through the turret of the E-100. Not as reliably as heat rounds from some other tanks in the game, but certainly pretty powerful indeed. Now, with him being on just 1 shell in the magazine, he decides to take a full reload. Now, in this spot, you have to be careful when trying to push tanks like the E-100, because if you overexpose yourself around this location, you can get hit by tanks that are going to be camping on the right-hand side of the map, and you definitely don't want to be exposing yourself to a Cobra who is going to munch up your hit points faster than you're going to be able to actually munch up theirs. And when you're in a tank like this, it's not particularly the easiest. Now he gets a little bit lucky to somehow track the IS-7 there, but we'll take the luck when you can take it, and he manages to get multiple rounds into this IS-7, who appears like he's going to try and side scrape but overextends himself, enabling him to retrack him here. And there you go, another free shot of damage on heavy tanks being way too confident. Now, as I said, the Cobra is of course in the middle of the map, and he's positioned himself in a nice place such that when the 50B pulls out or tries to, the Cobra can try and get a shot of damage. But unfortunately for a Cobra, there's another Cobra in the game, and he's about to find that out real quick. But in a couple of quick succession shots, he's able to get into the opponents, not getting greedy, which is one of the biggest things that is so frustrating when I see autoloaders being played, where they just sit out in front of opponents, taking shot after shot to get maybe 1 more shell of damage, and you don't even know if it's going to guarantee to pen. So often it's not actually worth it. He was obviously looking to be able to see what the opponents are going to be doing, finds a shot into the cupola of the TL7, finishes him off, and now he is in a bit of a pickle with an E3, an E100, and a Cobra who are all coming around. It's not looking all too good, but The E100 is of course clippable. He just needs that minuscule amount more time to be able to reload, and this is where these sort of tanks are perfect and a great use of cover to be able to use that to reload all your rounds. And a really nice angle here, looking through the crack in the wall here, and he manages to pump out 2 shots into the E100. The E100's taking a move, puts one into the E3 who bounces or misses, and then the E100 probably thinking that the 50B is reloading, which he is now. He's maybe a bit wary to pull around that corner as he could get shot out by this tank, but now he takes the reload, knowing full well that he is kind of just going to have to bait opponents into thinking he is not reloaded. And in World of Tanks, a lot of people do not realise that, or count shells in autoloaders, which is something you can do to negate their impact. If you've been enjoying this video at all or found these somewhat helpful to see these amazing games or entertaining, then feel free to check out some of the other content on the channel as well and subscribe to see some more. But with this game coming to a close and with a couple of great shots into E3 as he's trying to angle for 2 opponents, the APCR rounds of the 50B coming in quite clutch here, he's able to finish him off, and that allows him to try and figure out where the rest of the enemy team are and maybe get a final shot into the Maus. It's unclear as to what needs to be done here. Can he get a shot onto the top of the gorilla? Not quite. The Maus is going to be looking to try and get a shot onto him, but he's really trying to see if he can get one into this gorilla. But the Waffle Panzer IV, he takes one, unfortunately bounces, and then manages to place another one into him there, meaning that he is now on a long reload. And with the Maus being taken out of the game by one of his teammates, it's actually a pretty safe situation for him to be able to get a little bit more damage. But there is only 1,000 hit points left in the game, and having done 8,600 damage with 2,100 assistance, I'd be pretty pleased. 10k combined, and unfortunately not looking like he's going to be able to get another one in this game. But there's still a Cobra left alive with an artillery piece who can quite easily remove the 50B, but he wants the extra damage, and so at the end of the game sees if he can trade off the last remaining bits of his hit points for a bit more damage and a better game, which is what you can do in your own games regardless if you play autoloaders or not. And you can see here, nice couple of shots, the Cobra bounces. Can he get one into him? Yes he can. There you go, 5 kills with 9,200 damage and 2.1 thousand assisted in this amazing game of World of Tanks. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to like and of course check out this video on screen for a little bit more.